Hello friends, Kaysha here, and some of you might know me from the Karis Project podcast. So today I want to share with you a few updates of things that we have going on and how you can be a part of helping us going forward. So as many of you know, my father, Dale Richardson, is a mechanical engineering technologist with a bachelor degree in technology, and I worked for the provincial government back home in Saskatchewan, Canada, at a maximum security prison and hospital for the criminally and mentally insane. Now, as many of you know, we were exposing the improper contagion mitigation procedures for the COVID pandemic in early 2020, and likewise, how that relates to human trafficking, treason, and election interference in Canada and the United States. And this is precisely why the Karis Project has filed petitions for redress of grievance in the states of Texas, Colorado, and Michigan, as well as the province of Alberta in Canada. Now, it has recently come to the attention of the Karis Project that there was a mother in Colorado who was punished by the courts for trying to protect her children against a predator for being sexually abused and brutally attacked by the father. She's now going to jail and serving time for trying to protect her children against the evils and the corruption that we have all seen the last few years. Now, this is the same thing that we are seeing with Alberta's Minister of Health, Ariana Lagrange, who would not take the necessary actions to protect children from being sexually abused by convicted pedophiles and continuing to allow them to practice in the province of Alberta. And their licenses are currently being protected by the Alberta College of Physicians and Surgeons. Absolutely horrendous, if you ask me. The failure of our governments to bring these petitions to the floor have directly affected patriots like Tina Peters in Colorado, who are being politically persecuted with complete impunity, by the way, while convicted pedophiles are being protected. Here at the Karis Project, it is important to us that we the people are able to take our rights back and use our God-given constitutional rights to be able to expose the evil going on in this country and hold politicians accountable. We need especially the strong men to take charge in supporting the Karis Project's action plan financially in doing the work of holding the government accountable to protect our rights. And if you guys know me, you know already that this is my favorite quote, and so I'm going to leave it with you here today, because the most important thing that we need in this country right now is strong men. And I as a woman know just as much as anyone else just how valuable and important it is for us to have strong men leading our country to success. And so I'll leave you with this. The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who will not be bought or sold. Men who in their innermost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men whose conscience is as true to duty as the needle is to the pole. And men who will stand for the right, though the heavens may fall. So my friends, you've heard all that I've had to say today, and the importance of the same. As you can see, we have people, strong patriots and women, standing up for what's right and being completely destroyed. Politically, financially, we have good women in this country, good mothers whose children are being completely abused and taken advantage of within the system and even within their homes. And nothing is being done about it. Now is the time to take a stand. The Karis Project has an action plan, and based on all the experience that we've had throughout the years, we have the ability to teach people how to get this done. We need to work together in a time such as this, because our time is limited. Elections are coming up, and something needs to change. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Now's the time to take a stand, and that is precisely why I encourage you to stand with the Karis Project for we the people. Thank you.
Oops. Hello and welcome to the Karis Project podcast. Today we have with us, obviously, the host, my daughter, Kaysha, and we have Mike Vera, who's... Kaysha, you want to introduce him?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Karis Project. Today we have Mike Vera. So he is a board certified health coach, and he's an indigenous visionary in the realm of wellness, with MS in exercise and health promotion. He's backed by years as an adept personal trainer. Mike is now the leading force of Avantia Health Optimization as the host of Healthy and Awake podcast. Sorry guys, my English today is so awful. And he delves into the realms of health, medicine, and the hidden dynamics of influence. With a solid grounding in cognitive psychology, Mike is exceptionally skilled in decoding the tactics that shape our perceptions, paving the way for empowerment in health and beyond. So we're happy to have Mike. Of course, we have the OG engineer, my dad, and me, or well, that way, and then Mike this way. So how are you doing today, Mike? Thank you for joining us.
I'm doing very well, and it's great to be here. I'm excited to get into this.
All right. So, you want to tell us a little bit about what it is that you do? Because, I mean, for our viewers to kind of get a feel for what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, maybe a lot of people are thinking, a board certified health and wellness coach, what does that have to do with influence and propaganda? Well, the reality is that I use propaganda, or I use influence, I use marketing, I use the tools of influence to spread awareness about my business. I also, as a health coach, use influence to help nudge people towards health. And I should be clear, when I say propaganda, I think of that as a relatively neutral thing, because we often think of the bad guys spreading propaganda, but really it's a tool of information disbursement. And even further, when you look at the landscape that we're in today, we're constantly bombarded by influence. Every time we open up our phone, we turn on the TV, we log on to social media, we talk to a friend, and we never really acknowledge those constant nudges of influence. And so the ultimate question is, how can we make the best decisions for ourselves if we are not acknowledging the constant attacks on our minds? And so that is my big message. That's what I try to help people with, and make the world a healthier, more awake place.
Yeah, I don't necessarily like the term propaganda because it sounds bad.
Yeah.
But it's information, and getting the information in and how you get it. Because generally when we hear the term propaganda, it's because they're trying to deceive people. But we want people to get the right information so that they understand it and make better choices, right? We see what the media is doing, and they use it like so much on getting information out to the wrong people to make the wrong choices. And we want to get information to the right people to get the right choices being made so that they can make an informed choice. Because I'm not going to tell somebody what choice they should or shouldn't make, but I want them to have the correct information so that they can think about it, understand the choice that they're making, and make the correct choice rather than because I said so. Right? That's really where it's at. So,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, to go back to what I do as a profession, as a health and wellness coach, a lot of people out there want to work on their health. Now, imagine somebody comes to me and they want help, let's say losing weight. And I say, all right, well, you're doing everything wrong, and here's what you need to do instead. You need to do X, Y, and Z. That doesn't work for anybody. If anything, they're going to be offended. They're going to have a counter response. So I actually need to deploy specific tactics to make them feel open to communication. There has to be rapport built. I'm actually listening very closely to their words so that I can leverage their own language towards the goals they want to accomplish. I have to choose my questions and my sentences very carefully to indicate that this is a non-judgmental place. And so, I mean, all of this, just like how we think about propaganda, how it is a coordinated campaign of influence across multiple mediums, usually. So I have to similarly coordinate and strategize my language very carefully to achieve a specific outcome. But the big difference is that it's done ethically, because the person working with me, they're there for the reason to be influenced towards health. We have a discussion in the beginning, what this is going to be about. So we're both on the same page in a coaching relationship. And I do want to add one more thing, because I almost regret saying propaganda as the first word, but I do think about it very differently from a lot of people. Because you go back in history, you look at Edward Bernays. He's the father of modern propaganda. He's the nephew of Sigmund Freud. He put out a book called Propaganda, and it
Yes.
details how to use propaganda. But what happened when people stopped liking that word so much and he wanted to keep writing about it? He wrote another book called Public Relations, which people have no problem with today. Businesses do that all the time. It's such a propaganda move. And so they're really, to me, basically the same thing.
He also wrote that paper, The Engineering of Consent, as well. Yes, I've read his works as so forth. He was, he had a degree in agriculture or something like that, but he was like a very brilliant psychologist / sociologist. He actually got the generation of women to start smoking by associating smoking as torches of freedom for the women's rights movement, and also changed the public perception of what a woman looks, the attractiveness of the woman from what was before to kind of what we see today. So he understands very well the power of persuasion. So when we use the information, we want to use the information, obviously not to dupe people, like for example, what they're doing now, getting people to be unhealthy, eating garbage, and so forth. We want them to make better choices, and they're coming to us to learn and so forth. So information can be used constructively, or it can be used destructively, like what we see today. And so we don't want to do that. So yes, that's really good. I mean, this is important stuff. So what issues do you see with health that you see that they've sort of gone wrong, and what steps do you take to sort of correct that?
Well, those are two big questions. So where have we gone wrong? I mean, there's really a lot that I could say there, but let's pick one example that most people can resonate with, and that is the internet, social media. Now, it used to be the case historically that if you wanted to influence a population to all be on the same page and behave a certain way, they would need to be in the same physical location. So we're not only talking about cults where people can drink poison Kool-Aid, things that they would never do if they were thinking clearly, but even further back, when you look at the Roman Colosseum, the whole thing was set up to get people in the same spot so that they can project the values of the Roman Empire by entertaining them and blasting them with propaganda messages. It used to be the case that everybody needs to be physically together. But now we live in a world where we're all connected digitally, and that's great. It's benefiting us right now in this very moment, having this great conversation. But it also is a double-edged sword because it leaves us vulnerable to influence, even when we don't realize it. So they can basically use algorithms to put us into digital rooms and add AI into the mix where these messages can be tailored specifically to us based on data. It's a very dangerous landscape if people aren't careful. And so, I mean, the biggest thing is to defend yourself, to be aware, to be mindful, to recognize the world that we're in and conduct yourself according to your own values instead of maybe not even having values, which means that it's easier to push you around and behave towards the values of somebody else.
This is important because, like, I mean, from one of the quotes in this book, he says that people don't realize that their tastes and values are shaped by men that they've never seen before in their life because of the use of directing information. Because if you direct the wrong information and cut information, and this is especially more important now in a digital age, you will get people to make wrong sets of choices because if they never have the correct information, you have like A, B, and C, and A, B, and C will all lead you to make your kidneys explode. Well, one might get you there faster and you never get the healthy choice. Well, that's terrible, right? And so this is why the allowing of the freedom of information to come through so that the people that are giving the good information have that access so that person can sit down and say, okay, well, if I eat diet A, my kidneys might last the next 10 years. This one will be the 3 years. This one will be 2 years. But if I take the best diet, my kidneys will last me the duration of my life. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take the thing that's going to last the duration of my life. And this is where on the internet, it's extremely important to make sure that we get the correct messaging, because we see a lot of suppression of the right choices, especially with our health decisions, which I think is very, very important, because if you can't take care of your health, you can't think, you can't work properly or anything. Your quality of life sucks. So health is hugely important.
And it goes deeper than that, because so far what I've talked about, I've been thinking about the people being influenced, regular people like us here. But I do spend a lot of my time talking to medical doctors, both as a professional in health and wellness coaching and on my Healthy and Awake podcast, where the whole shtick is talking to the best doctors across the world. And I spoke with one recently, Dr. David Healy, who's a world-renowned psychopharmacologist. He wrote the book called Pharmageddon, and it's actually a book that was the first to really wake me up to what's going on in the world of medicine. And he details how doctors are propagandized. So doctors, medical doctors who are very well educated, very intelligent, can be influenced without realizing it through statistical manipulation, through ghostwriting medical articles. I can go on. And that's a problem for not only the doctors, but for the people who trust the doctors. I mean, we saw that over the pandemic where, a lot of us really started to question the integrity of medicine as a whole. And so, a lot of doctors woke up, fortunately, as a result of the pandemic, and a lot of people went further asleep. So it really, if we want to make healthy decisions, we have to think for ourselves. We have to find doctors who we can identify as being awake so that we can trust them, because everybody is targeted with this stuff differently.
Yes. Actually, funny thing that you kind of brought up the whole aspect of the health, because a lot of portions of health are not looked at in its entirety, right? Like, I mean, we have things that we should do, a lot of prevention, which we're not talking about, and air quality, huge thing in being healthy, and in fact, in infection controls. This was largely never talked about, and doctors are not responsible for that. People like me, I have a background in mechanical engineering. I'm a technologist, got a degree. We deal with things like air quality. Poor air gets you sick. Sick building syndrome in the 70s was a thing. When you need infection controls, you come to people like me, but then they had doctors doing these things, and doctors doing things outside of their scope of practice, which was something that should have never been done. You get the right people to do the right things. We all work together to get from start to finish a whole healthy thing. And I think that is something that bad information also contributed to that, to people, to get them to do things, and people to listen to people that they should have not listened to, because they had like you heard, the industrial hygienists screaming about the masks, and these guys deal with them like crazy. And you had guys like Fauci, who's a doctor that has no business telling you about masks, because he doesn't know the first thing on how they work functionally from an engineering perspective.
You brought up a lot of really good points there, and two stood out to me the most. One is, one of the things that really allows us to be influenced in a way that might not benefit us at all is something we all have. It's called the authority bias. So if we come across somebody and they have a white coat and they look like a professional, our brain takes a shortcut. And these are important shortcuts, because our brain wants to be very efficient, but we see that white coat and we let our defenses down. And we automatically, without knowing really anything about this person, we trust them more because they present as a professional. That's exactly why a lot of people trusted Dr. Fauci without knowing anything about some of the horrible things that he's done, or his questionable background, or his conflicts of interest. And so this is why critical thinking and a healthy sense of skepticism is important. We cannot simply accept what we see at face value. We have to go a little bit deeper. And unfortunately, a lot of people just want to be comfortable. They want to reach for the lowest hanging fruit and do the easiest thing. It takes work. to vet somebody and figure out if they're worthy of my trust. So it really just have that healthy sense of skepticism. I could give you 20 other points to protect yourself, but that is number one at the top of the list, healthy sense of skepticism.
Well, no, and I would certainly.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say something because you
Oh,
looked like you wanted to talk.
oh yeah, yeah. I would certainly agree with that, Sir Mike. And I think that, Jesus, as a Christian, Jesus gives us that example and shows us that he shows us to trust the actions of people and not to actually trust people. I trust actions and not words. And Jesus himself said he's not a respecter of persons, and I think we should follow that example in kind. Someone will by their fruits show you who they are, and people think that we're not meant to judge people as Christians. Rather, we're not meant to judge their salvation, but very much intended to judge the actions that they display to us on a daily basis so that we can, in kind, mitigate the risk of such things and as it relates to our family, our communities, and churches and things and the like. So, no, I very much agree with you.
I think that's great. And people's faith and people's religious values is a perfect example of something we discussed a little bit earlier. And that is understanding exactly what your values are so that you're not susceptible to the influence of other people. Because that's really what goes on. And here's something everybody can relate to. Let's put aside the pandemic and Fauci and all that for a moment. Everybody can relate to this. I'm going into Target and I'm going to buy just 2 things. I swear that's all I want, 2 things. And then we leave the store. What happens? We have 10 things or more. That's when we get a little weak. We buy those cookies. We buy an extra pair of shoes that we don't need. That's not an accident. They deliberately strategize on how to influence us to what? Take our money, really. Corporate executives in suits sit around and plan on how you are going to behave. But if you have a strong sense of values, whether it's based on your faith or whether it's based in just personal strong values or health, whatever it is, that actually allows you to orient your behavior in a way that is in line with those values. And there are ways to actually make it easier to remember what your values are. But when you behave with that sense of values, it's almost like a shield of defense where that marketing, that propaganda over there, none of that really sticks because that's someone else's values. So I totally agree with what you said, and I think that's a powerful message.
Yes, what you said right there was actually, very on point, because when you internalize and understand your set of values, right, then you can check about anything that influence, because a lot of this influence comes in subconsciously and we're not aware of it. But when that influence comes in, when you check it against your value system, you're like, nah, no, right? Because then you know that you're being influenced because you understand what your value set is. And this is why people with faith that internalize and understand that they're constantly checking it about something that doesn't change. And this is why it's important as a society that we have to have a core set of values that we all agree on. Because if you don't, then people can easily shift it to one area or another. And that's where, again, critical thinking, like you mentioned, comes in, because you don't have to be an expert on something to know whether or not someone is telling you the truth or something or not. If you're like, explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old child and they have no idea how to explain it, chances are they don't understand the topic, right? And so if they don't understand the topic and they can't make you understand it, then maybe it's time to go to someone else who can explain to me properly why I need to do this. Because most people don't want to, like, for example, get sick and die. So if there's something going on, show me what I need to do and why I need to do it. And most people are going to be like, well, I'll do it. Because when you're sick, does anybody need to tell you to take the soup, the fluids, and get some rest? No, you want to feel better, right? So it's not hard to persuade people to do things to protect themselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I may, there is a very powerful tool that I use with many of my clients to help really bring this idea of values to the forefront. And, funny enough, perfectly on point, it's a way of propagandizing yourself. So in the military, when they want to indoctrinate people into a way of thinking, and by the way, happy Veterans Day to all those who served. And I say indoctrination, again, neutrally. I'm not saying that as a nefarious thing. But when we are trying to technically instill a doctrine into the mentality of soldiers, indoctrination, there are tactics that are used, whether we're talking about our own military or others. And one of those things is basically repeating some kind of pledge. You see this not only in the military, but in some religions and cults, because it's a very effective tactic to influence and reshape the way people think. And the tool here is creating a values-based pledge that you will recite regularly. So literally listing out what your values are, what's important to you, what do you want to drive your behavior, list all that out on paper. And then either on your own or with AI, if that's your thing, you can say, hey, let's make this into a short pledge that I can recite daily. And that accomplishes a lot of things. Not only are you constantly reminded of your values, but you're also priming yourself to behave. Even by saying them out loud and thinking of them, you're really activating that part of your brain that makes it more likely to follow through with whatever behavior you're engaging with. It's so important to have something like that, because many of us can get steered off track. We can kind of get lost along the way, but that's something that we create from our own values that helps keep us centered. Very powerful.
I prefer the term inculcation rather than propaganda to make a distinguishment between the two terms, just because even though it is a neutral term, most people, when they hear it, they think of Nazi Germany. I'll get a word from our sponsor before we continue.
Kamala Harris, the liberal California politician, some people say could become the next president of the United States. Well, Mike Lindell here, and this should frighten everyone. She's supported open borders. She's failed us as the current borders are. And she even helped raise money to get criminals out of jail. Have you seen her new tax plan? It could be the nail in the coffin for our country. That's why you should stop what you're doing right now and reach out to the top-rated precious metal company, Goldco. Goldco has over 6,000 five-star reviews, a bunch of awards, and it's helped people just like you purchase over $2.5 billion in gold and silver. Visit MikeLikesGold.com to get your free 2025 gold and silver kit, plus up to a 10% instant match on bonus silver for qualified accounts. Visit MikeLikesGold.com. That's MikeLikesGold.com.
All right. Yeah. So, I mean, what else? So with your work, you work with doctors and so forth. Who else do you work with?
Well, doctors is the big one because, again, those are the people who are looked to for trust when it comes to making health decisions. And one of the cool things that I'm very proud of about my show and my work is that I'm not here to think for people or tell them what the best decision for their health is. In fact, I try to present both sides of an argument so that people can take it all in and decide for themselves. So a good example are two recent interviews that I've done. One of them is with Dr. Sean Baker, who is known as the Carnivore MD. He's a bestseller, millions of followers. He's been on Joe Rogan, huge in this space. And so we talked about the carnivore diet. And I'm actually doing that myself, but I don't want to let my own biases influence my audience. So I also talked to another best-selling Joe Rogan, former guest, millions of followers in the vegan space. So the total opposite of the carnivore diet. And, it is interesting and something to think about that two well-educated, very smart medical doctors can come to two totally opposite opinions. One is saying eat all the steak you can possibly eat, and the other is saying avoid steak and eat nothing but plants and vegetables. So, a lot of these ideas and debates in health can get quite messy, and I'm not here to tell people what the ultimate answer is, because very often there is no single correct answer with some of these health topics. So I put it all out there and let people decide for themselves, but I really couldn't do that without the help of the many doctors that I talk to, because I have to stay in scope of my practice. What I do as a board certified health and wellness coach is I help people implement the changes, and we work on the behavior change. Now, some of the more clinical stuff and science stuff, I have to know and really know my stuff to be able to best help the people I work with. But I couldn't do that without some of the great medical doctors out there.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Kaysha.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I can go after.
Yeah, health and wellness, it's important for people, doctors especially, to kind of get to that dialogue. And what a lot of people don't realize is that everybody's gonna, no matter what you do, everything you do has to be tailored to each individual person, because each person has different tolerances. Like, you can't, like how they had those food guides and say that you need X, Y, and Z, and this is it. That's stupid. Like,
Yeah.
Because each person is going to tolerate things differently, and you have to start looking at the individual and how they're going to respond to it. Because some people, you give them this and they just can't tolerate it, right? And then you got to start asking questions as to why certain things are happening. Because, like, for example, bread was eaten throughout human history. Nobody had a problem with bread. Why does everybody have a problem with bread today? Like, these are questions that you have to ask, because I mean, they called it bread of life. Now it's like nobody can eat bread. So
Yeah.
I look at the some of the extremes that we're doing in that people are doing right now, and it's like, why is there a need for this? Like, why are things that we used to eat traditionally no longer palatable for us to eat? What have they done? Because I know we see a lot of, genetic manipulation and all these types of things that they're doing, and chemicals. And so I think that we'll have a better understanding of how things are when we get better food. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah. And I certainly as well second that there is much being done to the food currently, because I mean, predominantly throughout my life was predominantly raised. I love that great on it. But there were times where I ate like fish and meat as well, but just didn't really prefer. But now in this current life, I person all of a sudden cannot have vegan food, and that's very easy because it's what I've eaten the majority of my life. Even though there were times fish and meat, all of a sudden I didn't predominate that. Now all of a sudden I can't really tolerate it. So I thought being done to the food that we're not fully aware about, but even still, everyone has to do what is fitted for their that time. You can't do something that's harmful to your body. You can't eat food you sick. You have to do and if our food was better, I'm sure more people would go about things a different way. But there's so much, like, you can't even trust anymore. I mean, every like the appeal products and things like that, there's obviously things like that, but I agree, every person has to do their body particularly.
And safe bet to, if it comes in a brightly colored box, it's probably not going to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everything that both of you said is why I'm proud to do what I do, because we don't offer cookie cutter approaches, because it just wouldn't work. I mean, imagine I write a workout program for somebody who's been really on top of things for the past 5 years, and then I have a new client come in and they're kind of just getting started on their health journey. I can't go, hey, use this guy's workout where you're deadlifting 300 pounds. It's not going to work. So you have to really meet people where they're at in order to best help them. And it helps with communication too, because they feel heard that way. I start all my work with, okay, so where are you trying to get to? Because I want to help you get there. What have you tried already? What are some of the tactics that worked really well for you in the past? And it's all this exploratory types of questions so that I can specifically tailor an approach to the individual. But another thing both of you touched on was basically, I'll say it outright, poison food. In our country, we live in an environment where I call it death by 1,000 cuts. because we might eat a little bit of pesticides in some produce, and that's not going to kill us right away overnight, obviously. But what is the cumulative effect of having those pesticides and BPA and other endocrine disruptors and the PFAS in the packaging and all these mystery chemicals that were supposed to be protected by some of these regulatory agencies like the FDA, and they have a policy called GRAS, generally recognized as safe, which as far as I can tell means that it doesn't kill you right away. But again, like all these things, we look in the blood of people and they have microplastics and they have all kinds of things that really should not be there, heavy metals. And, it's really a shame because, again, death by 1,000 cuts, this environment that we're in, it's like any decision that we make is going to harm us a little bit in some way. And people often get depressed when they realize that. But I will say the good news is that not everything has to be like that. I think a lot of us can do the best job that we can. We can learn about these things and try to make better decisions and scrutinize some of the companies that we buy from. And ultimately, when we put a little more care into the decisions that we make and we're more aware of those decisions, I think ultimately we'll be better off.
I agree. This is why eating locally as much as you can is better, because there's more accountability. Like when, your food was coming from somewhere else by somebody's controlled by somebody sitting in some office tower in some city halfway across the world, you don't have the same accountability, because if, you're going to the produce and Farmer John and Bob are bringing their stuff over there and they poison people, well, nobody wants their food, right? Because then you're out of business. So you have that accountability when you're eating locally. And then you eat a variety of foods that you don't normally eat because you had to, because of the availability. And then, sure, can you bring in some stuff from somewhere else? Yeah, that's fine. But it's better to do it as natural as possible, because and then where you are makes a big difference. Like, because I went to school in the States in 96, right before my daughter was born. And what I noticed, and the food here in Canada is bad, but it's worse in the States. They sold things that you would go to jail for, get fined for in Canada and the States. And I was amazed. And now it's worse, right? Because it's gotten worse here. So I know it's gotten worse there. And that's where getting that, the making the best choices that you can with what you have is important, because that's where the chronic diseases are going through the roof, which are largely preventable.
Even something like Arby's, even if it's not toxic, which it probably is, it's just gross. Maybe that should be illegal. But even more important, actually, a lot of us, we do talk about food, and I do think that's an important thing to focus on. But when you actually look at things biophysiologically, there's a more important discussion to be had, and that is the discussion around our light environment. You may have heard of circadian rhythm. If you're watching instead of listening, that's why I'm wearing these weird-looking red glasses, is actually to protect circadian rhythm. And unfortunately, when a lot of people hear that, or where they hear blue light blocking glasses, they immediately think, oh, that's just for sleep. Yes, it is going to help your sleep, but I follow the work of someone called Dr. Jack Kruse. He's a world-renowned neurosurgeon. He's waking a lot of people up in a very big way. And one of the things he talks about is how the prevalence of blue light in our computer screens, in our phone screens, in our light bulbs is actually a weapon designed by DARPA to make us easier to control, which, I mean, to a lot of people, I'm sure that sounds totally crazy. But when you actually look at the science, chronic exposure to artificial light, especially at night, diminishes your dopamine receptors. It causes dysregulation of your circadian rhythm, which, by the way, circadian rhythm is the glue that holds all of your biological and metabolic functions together. It's the reason that you get hungry and have energy in the morning and that you get sleepy at night. It's what controls your hormones. It is everything. It's all controlled by light. And DARPA, part of the United States military knows how much harm that blue light can cause, to the point where it makes us easier to control. This is not an accident. This is very purposeful, a deployed weapon to control the masses. So very simply, get sunlight in the morning. Get as much as you can. Don't be afraid of the sun, but also protect yourself at night. Try to not look at the phone at midnight. You ever look at your phone at midnight and then all of a sudden you have uncontrollable munchies, you can't get to sleep, you're wired, your mind is racing? That's because you just looked at a screen that effectively told your brain it's noon, it's daytime. I need to eat so I can get through the day. I need to have energy. Of course, you're not going to get to sleep. So circadian rhythm is very, very important to talk to, possibly even more than food.
Whoops, I have a comment to make, but we'll have one more sponsor quickly.
Hello, everyone. Would you like to boost your performance, increase your focus, and restore your energy levels? Supercharge your energy and improve your cell health with the wellness company's MitoSupport formula developed by experts like Dr. Peter McCullough. MitoSupport formula contains 5 incredible ingredients, including D-ribose and PPQ. Best of all, it's vegan, gluten-free, and made right here in the USA, so you know you can trust it. Buying American-made naturalistic ingredients of this quality separately costs almost $110. Our formula is only $84.99. Get MitoSupport today by going to twc.health. Listeners, use the code Karis at checkout for an additional discount. Go to twc.health, promo code Karis, Karis, and get the energy and focus you and your family deserves.
Yeah, so kind of back to what you're saying, like I got a coating on my glasses as well because of the work that I do and looking at a lot of computer screens, and it does affect you. And then on top of that, what they'll do, and I notice this, especially as a man, the algorithms on social media will change. And they'll change, like, for example, as a man, at like around 9 o'clock or so, you'll start seeing more scantily clad women and things like this to get you to do things. And then you look at the phone, then that light is there that is going to keep you awake, that's going to not allow your brain to trigger the sleep scale and keep the waking cycle. Then what ends up happening, you're getting sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation will throw absolutely everything off. I don't care what diet you're eating, what workout plan you're getting. If you're not getting proper sleep, you will never get to where you need to go. And this is what they're destroying us with, is by destroying our sleep cycles. And they're using a lot of it, our phones and technology, to do it.
Yeah. So it destroys your sleep cycles. It basically puts you into a constant state of fight or flight, which is also something we've historically known. The media puts out fear-mongering messages, not for fun, but a big part of that is to keep you in that state of fight or flight, to keep you really easy to manipulate. And so the blue light from screens also play a big role in that by destroying not only your sleep schedule, but that affects your hormones, which is really what drives your sleep schedule. And by ruining the dopamine circuitry in your body through the eyes, it keeps you addicted. This is no secret. All of us know how easy it is to get addicted to our phones. We open it up once to check a text message. Next thing you know, it's been 4 hours scrolling through crazy TikTok videos. That is a big part of literally the MK Ultra program, because by having us addicted to this technology, well, we're leaving ourselves more susceptible to all those influential messages that we talked about earlier. And when I say influential messages, I'm not talking about like old school propaganda like Uncle Sam posters. I mean, very subtle things that you would never notice. And either it's created by our own intelligence agencies or foreign intelligence agencies, or it's created by regular people and is identified as a possible piece of the influence puzzle and is leveraged. They broadcast it more easily throughout the social media channels. And again, addiction keeps us hooked into all of this. If we were not addicted to our phones, we wouldn't be as exposed to as much influence.
Yes, and when you look at what happened with COVID, you can tell that this is also part of the design and the thought process in doing this, because everything became virtual. They cut off human contact, which is necessary for human survival. We are social beings. When you isolate human beings, their mental health degrades, and it's very detrimental to human existence. And replacing it with the online is never going to replace the in-person contact, but it will give you dopamine hits, which will make you more prone to addiction, which will make you more prone to getting yourself into that sleep deprivation, which puts you into a more highly suggestible state. In order to be manipulated, you become more aggressive and so forth when you're subjected to reduced levels of sleep. And when you're looking at the way that this is working, when I examine something like this is not by random happenstance. It's impossible. It's too perfectly coordinated to have all of these moving parts that fit together that helps to destroy us as people. And we need to step back from that and go back to the things that were simple, right? I'm not saying don't use technology, but getting it, like you said, getting outside in the sun. That is, seeing the sun for me now it's like a joy, right? Because I have to spend so much time indoors. I used to work as a heavy duty mechanic, and I would go out and, you get the sunlight going in and outside, but then when you got the days when you got to go work outside, and when it was nice, you were like, awesome. But now when I'm chained to a computer most of the days, I'm like, oh, Jesus. But you know what I'm saying? But getting outside is important, getting active, talking to people, doing the regular things, having dinner around the table, that kind of stuff, right? I mean, regular human stuff, right?
I've spoken to many doctors about this. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there. You could go ahead.
Can't hear you. You're can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that just the other day I was laughing because just on stream I was saying how I would open the blinds and I'd be like, what a beautiful day to stay inside, and then close them back. It's like, oh, the sun is shining, better not go out there. But it's just the heat of Arizona what kills me, why I haven't gone out. But no, you're right. Sunlight is so important. It's part of heliotherapy, and I tell people all the time as well, if you want to heal your endocrine system or you're having any problems, hydro and heliotherapy is a huge part of that. People don't realize just how much 30 minutes or an hour a day outside can affect literally their entire system. And of course, we know the endocrine system is very much your thyroid, your brain function, your digestive system, your reproductive system, everything. So, these are things that people should strive to. And if you can kill two birds with one stone and get the exercise and the sunlight in the same time, it's all the better. But anyways, you were saying.
Yeah, 1,000%. So many people are going to the gym, trying to do the right thing, and they're working out under this harmful blue light that we've been talking about. And I've spoken to a lot of doctors about this topic, and it's very clear. There's no doubt about this. Not only is sun really good for your overall health and reducing symptoms of chronic illness, but even simple, small things like street lights have been linked to cancer, diabetes, autoimmune conditions. I mean, these are very serious things. And I want to be very clear about that, because a lot of people will hear, oh, you know what, get some sunlight. Who doesn't know that? And they don't take it seriously, and they still don't get the sunlight. It's so easy to dismiss this advice because people want to talk about food and exercise, which are great, but there's also a lot of money in those fields. You have advertisements constantly for the newest, best gym or my food company and my products, but no one's advertising the sun. If anything, you look at Bill Gates, he's trying to suppress the sun. He has projects that he's talking with the United States military about spraying particles in the sky to diminish the sun. Now, when you think about everything we've talked about so far today and how helpful the sun can be, when you also consider how much money, how many millions of dollars Bill Gates has invested into pharmaceutical companies, it makes a lot of sense that he's trying to block the sun to keep people unhealthy so that they'll be taking drugs that they don't need, don't work, and will probably make them worse, and then they'll take even more drugs in the first place. So don't be afraid of the sun.
Well,
Get as much of it as you can.
Well, no, I agree with that 100%. And one of the reasons why I didn't go down the route of doctor when I went to school. I was considering becoming a doctor, following my dad's original footsteps instead of engineering. But then I too was like, you know what, one day I'll go to jail for not giving pharmaceuticals. I was sure of that when I started taking the foundational classes, and I said, I can't really handle that. I seen my grandmother as a nurse get fired from endless jobs. I said, I would just go straight to jail. So I was like, I'll just do nutrition instead, because you can't sell what is actually good. It's free because it's free. Healthy living through exercise, diet, proper sleep, water, sunlight, natural things. They don't sell as much as pharmaceuticals, but they certainly last a whole lot longer. And I'm in the business of not wanting to have long-term patients, but rather meeting new people and making new connections through like the way in which God intends us to help one another. So, the pharmaceutical company and the doctors, and a lot of them that, involve themselves in that way, of course, it's their incentive to try and do things or like Bill Gates, diminish the sun as much as they can, because that pays them, as opposed to actually keeping the population healthy. Because in the immediate, sure, you suffer, but over the long stretch of time, you would actually benefit a lot, even financially, if you actually helped people get better in a way that they could control themselves and feel like they have power and control over their lives, as opposed to being, constantly stuck on a pill, like you were saying, or something else.
Yeah, well said.
Oh, I can't hear you, Dad. You're muted.
Sorry. Of course. Just briefly here before we close, coming from an engineering perspective, I can tell you that anything that uses electricity is going to generate some type of electromagnetic radiation. And we have to be careful on how we use those things, because it affects us. And those can be used in manners to do more detriment, or be less harmful, or do more harm, right? And so we can't just automatically think that just because somebody gives this to us and they sell it to us and make us feel like we want it, rather than generally showing us the benefits of it, we have to do some digging for ourselves. And then people have to begin to start adapting to the market, because promoting health, there is money to be made in that by teaching people ways on how to be healthy, instead of trying to just sell them a cure while somebody's selling them a poison to give you a cure, which that's the model that doesn't work. It destroys us. We want to kind of build each other up. So just think a little bit more differently. Just quickly before we close here, how can people reach you, and what's your final thoughts?
Yeah, well, I guess final thoughts: stay healthy, stay awake, stay skeptical. But again, my name is Mike Vera. People can find me at mikevera.com. That is Mike, V as in Victor, ERA.com. There you will find my health coaching business, as well as Healthy and Awake podcast, where I challenge the status quo in health by talking to some of the best medical doctors around the world. And many of them put their careers on the line to say some of the things that they say. So it's a great show. I think it's one of the best shows out there. I'm competing with Joe Rogan. I'm coming for his spot, but that's where you can find me.
All right, awesome. So go ahead, support Mike, and with what he's doing with the health and wellness. And if you like what we're doing, support us. You can see the ticker. We have stuff in the links. His information's also in the links on Rumble and Facebook and so forth. And I will close here with a prayer, and then I will turn it over to my daughter for her closing remarks. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the work that Mike and others are doing to help promote the health, to help rebuild people's minds and bodies so that they could rebuild their families, their community, their churches, and their nation. Be with us and bless us and help us that we would become healthy again, and that we would come back to God and become spiritual again. Be with us and bless us this day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dad, for the prayer as always. And thank you, Mike, for joining us today. I love that you had to share. Guys, go out and support him. This has been The Psychology of Propaganda. that's great. I love these conversations so much. It actually reawakens my realize how much I myself also love health, and I think it's important for us to take into consideration the way in which these things actually do affect us in our everyday life. Some of them seem like they're very small, but these things add up, as he said earlier. It is death by 1,000 cuts, and unfortunately, in this day and age, it seems like we do have to pick our poison. But there are things that we can do to mitigate these things. Not everything is going to be an immediate cure or solution, and one thing might not work the same way for the other, but it certainly can mitigate and reduce some of the effects of the things that we're seeing across the board, even if it's not the complete and final answer. So in any case, and anyhow, make sure you stay healthy and stay awake. Like Mike said, go out and support him, and support us too here at the Karis Project. And we'll definitely have to have Mike back on in the future. But until then, we'll catch you guys in the next one. And to my dearest Karis, until we meet again, we will. Ciao.